You're watching The Citizen Report, real, in-depth American.
Welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon. Thank you for joining me today. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. It's always good to be back here with you. Thank you so much for joining me. So, since last night, I was on the air. I think it was probably the latest. Well, I have to go back and check, but it was probably the latest, certainly the latest live broadcast that I've ever done in the overnight. I came on the air just before 3 a.m. When news was beginning to break regarding the situation in Iran, with the U.S. and Israel launching coordinated strikes against the Iranian regime, select targets in Tehran, as my understanding goes. So since then, as to be expected, there's been a lot of developments on multiple fronts. The most significant development has been the dramatic development, actually, that the Iran supreme leader has reportedly been killed, and the Israeli senior officials are actually claiming that his body has been retrieved. And we're going to talk about this for a few minutes. And what I want to kind of do here is briefly touch on that and kind of get into some other context here as well. In the meantime, however, this is a headline from ABC News, and this says, Trump tells ABC News a lot of Iranian leadership gone. So that is from ABC News. Now, there's some conflicting reports concerning this, and perhaps the most pointed contention has to do with the fact that the Tehran regime is actually claiming that the supreme leader of Iran is actually not dead. And they're actually saying, among other things, that Israel is currently engaging in psychological warfare by putting this information out there. So now I was watching a little bit of Al Jazeera to kind of get a different perspective of things, and I thought it was kind of interesting that, in one sense, they had one of the headlines that they said, and I thought the wording was kind of interesting. Basically, they said, beware of Israeli psychological warfare as reports emerge, alleging basically that the Iran supreme leader is dead. It's kind of interesting how they kind of ran it as a parallel, not, basically saying that he is dead, and not, that it's kind of a neither confirmed nor denied type of thing. So I think the Iranian regime wants very much to maintain the optics of strength as much as possible. But I think now that we have Israeli state officials, we have U.S. media reporting it, basically the Iranian supreme leader is most likely dead at this point. So let's get into a little bit more of this. This is from Press TV. Press TV is the one of the state media agencies in Iran, and I'm just going to put it straight up on screen for you. And it, they got these headlines that, basically IRGC, that's the Iranian regime, launches new wave of retaliatory missile strikes on U.S. bases across region. Iran's retaliatory attack completely destroys sophisticated U.S. radar system in Qatar. So this obviously reads to me as being, on their part, on Iran's part, psychological warfare as well. So you have psychological warfare on both sides at this point. And so, when you have kind of this, what they say, the fog of war, it's hard to sometimes discern exactly what's going on in the moment. So you have to kind of back away a little bit and understand that sometimes the information that's initially put out there is either fake news, meant to deceive people. And I remember, looking at history. In fact, in World War II, in order to boost morale, as I understand, the Japanese government basically put out a completely fabricated allegation that they had attacked San Francisco in order to boost the morale of the Japanese people after they were just hit. I believe the timing of that was in the immediate aftermath of the atomic bomb that was detonated over, I believe, Hiroshima. And they were trying to rally support for continuing to resist the U.S. and Western forces. So let's go now to this report. This is from Annie Jacobsen, who I have a lot of personal respect for. And I think that whenever she shares something, it typically holds a lot of weight to it. And she's citing Reuters, but she is saying that the body of Khamenei has been found, and he is confirmed as dead, Israeli official says. So she's putting that out there, and I tend to, like I said, put a lot of weight behind the things that she says because she's well researched, and and I tend to think that she's on point most of the time. X22 report is also reporting Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is confirmed dead. So X22 report is now saying that as well. Now let me go to this. This was a post on X by Matt Tardo, and he put this information out there that is purported, at least, to be satellite imagery. And I'm just going to actually, let's take this full. And you know what? I should have made this bigger, so let me do that right quick. Try to do this stuff before I go on air, but sometimes I don't catch every single one. But okay, let's take it full now. So this is what he says. Satellite imagery appears to show 3 separate holes indicative of bunker buster bombs inside Ayatollah Khamenei's home in Tehran. If this is the case, the operation was likely kicked off at a time intended to pin the Ayatollah inside his bomb shelter and then attacked it accordingly. So let me scroll down here to show the imagery. So apparently those circles must represent the bunker buster bombs where they detonated, basically. And you can see certainly a lot of damage has been made to that immediate area. And then I guess it's a little bit better breakdown of those particular spots in that carnage, showing I guess where those type of bombs actually met its target. So that is sort of the latest, and it's still rapidly developing. And I think going back to my earlier point of neither confirm nor deny, you have Al Jazeera. They obviously have a pro shall I say Arab sort of viewpoint, we'll put it that way, and they're being very cautious, I will say, on what they're saying, because they're not going as far as to say that the Iran leader as of now is dead, at least at last check, but rather that reports are growing that he's dead. And to be honest with you, at this immediate moment in time, that may actually be journalistically more accurate, that it's not necessarily firm confirmation, but it's more like you have increasing reports, but not a firm confirmation, definitive confirmation. You have the Israeli senior officials claiming that Khamenei is dead, and then sort of cascading from that, you have other people picking up on it, and either they're going along with it or they're not. But we'll go along with it for now and assume that that is accurate, because I don't think that they would put that information out there unless if it turned out to be true. Because the thing is, if they say that and then it's not true, that does nothing but hurt their credibility. So they're not going to put that information out there unless there's reason to believe that that is true. So now let me go to just briefly, actually, I'm not going to stay on this, but I was trying to bring up a live camera in Tehran, but apparently, once again, not surprisingly, the Iranian regime has cut the internet reportedly across much of the country. But you do have live pictures from other regions of the Middle East, such as in Israel and in Doha. So, and then on the top left, you have where basically you have live, how should I say it, live air traffic. And it's a little grainy. I could have brought this up on its own, but you kind of get the idea. And I'm just going to bring this in tighter, if I can, to show you this. But you can clearly see that in Iran itself, which has been compared to being like the size of Alaska. So, you look at a map and sometimes you don't really fully grasp the scale of the geography of it, but it's a huge country. It really is. And basically, the air traffic, unless of course, with a disclaimer that unless of course you have ground radar that's been destroyed or something, then of course you won't have returning data. But assuming that that's not factoring into this, then you can say that you can clearly tell that while there is air traffic in other parts of the Middle East, certainly not in Iran, at least that we can tell, and it looks like much is the same in Iraq and Kuwait, Syria too, it looks like as well. So let's back this back out for a moment. But you can, earlier there was more activity. It looks like even now as I'm talking, Tel Aviv is seeing some action, possibly the, Iron Dome intercepting incoming missiles, which of course the Iranian regime is retaliating in recent hours, and in fact ongoing, as I understand. So let's go now. Let me come back full for a second. Let's go now to this, which I think is interesting, and a hat tip to X22 Report for putting this, for sharing this on his platform. So that way, I regularly monitor, particularly in major news events. When needed, I certainly try to monitor X22 Report. So hat tip to him for sharing this on his platform. This is a post. Let's start actually with Nancy Pelosi's point of view of this. This is what Nancy Pelosi says, and it's just absolutely ridiculous what she says. And clearly she has an aide writing this. There's no way she's coherent enough to write this herself, but I digress. Nancy Pelosi on X put this up, and I should mention before I read this, it was actually posted before this all started. So interesting timing, but actually before this all began. I would say roughly 24 hours before it began, give or take. She said, quote, President Obama masterfully used diplomacy to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. The Trump administration, in its ineptitude, threw away that agreement. Now they're making threats and risking unnecessary conflict because they can't match Obama's success. Imagine trying to say that with a straight face, right? Let me play this soundbite from CNN, and then I'll share the next thing.
Because this is very important. We all agree that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. President Obama
folks.
Masterfully.
You know what? Let me start that soundbite over again. Here we go.
Because this is very important. We all agree that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. President Obama masterfully, with great virtuosity, had a diplomatic solution to how we would have a nuclear agreement with Iran. He turned that around, he rejected that, cast it aside, and now is using threat of military and the rest. It's so ridiculous. It's so inept. It's so below the quality of leadership that our country is used to.
So that was Nancy Pelosi, and judging by the lower third graphic, I'm guessing this was actually the night of the State of the Union, so that must have been on Tuesday night that she actually said that. I don't think I need to really say much. On its face, it's ridiculous what she just said there. But basically, Awakened Outlaw on X shared this post by Nancy Pelosi and responded to this. And let's go to it now. He says, quote, do you remember how back in 2016 when President Obama had $400 million of our money stacked on wooden pallets and flew it into Iran under the cover of darkness on an unmarked cargo plane for a clandestine runway handoff? Oh, and how that served as but the initial installment on $1.7 billion he forked over all in cash to the wholly corrupt leaders of Iran as part of his truly awful JCPOA nuclear deal. And how that deal the one meant to keep their nuclear weapons pursuit in check, didn't have any time anywhere, no notice entry to inspect facilities. How, instead of the aforementioned restriction on inspections, meant that there was a managed access process put in place that would 100% allow them to avoid getting caught cheating. Did I mention that Iran was and is the number one ranked country responsible for funding and supporting terrorism worldwide? Good times. So that was from, what's his name again? Awakened Outlaw on X. And absolutely, I mean, let's not forget, Obama basically helped fund Iran, their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. It's pure treason what Obama did there. And of course, there's questions about his legitimacy as president anyway, but notwithstanding that, that was pure treason. And I said last night, and I was just barely skimming the surface on it, but the deep state put into place the regime that is there now. Arguments could be made that the Shah before it was also put in by the deep state, but not sure about that. But what is certain is that the deep state, the clowns in action, hint, hint, agency, put in place what is now the at least up to this point, the ruling, or the governing body, as it were, the regime in Iran. So, a lot of people are concerned that we're entering into an endless war, and I totally understand that. I mean, I don't want us getting in war. My principle is the same as it's ever been. I don't want us involved in any foreign country, quite honestly. I don't want, excuse my French, I don't want the world to go to hell. But on the other hand, the United States is its own country and should be its own country, and therefore we should be focused on our own affairs, not worried and getting meddling into other countries. But like I said, the deep state has infiltrated multiple countries, and therefore, unfortunately, it's going to be it is involved to unwind that, to get rid of that deep state apparatus. It's going to take more than flushing the deep state in this country. So I think it's important to remember that. I think there is certainly precedent where a president can launch limited strikes, but it cannot become this drawn out war posture. So, we'll see what happens. I'm going to hold back on, we'll see what happens, I should say. And I think that I personally do believe that this is not going to end up being an endless war, but time will tell. I certainly can imagine that the warmongers, Lindsey Graham and the likes of them, would love nothing more than for this to become an endless shooting match, and it just keeps the military-industrial complex going. I mean, let's not forget, without war, that doesn't stay in business. It can't stay in business. It has to have war to survive. So, we'll see what happens. But I think what we're seeing is the deep state being dealt with in Iran, and yes, the other country of concern in the Middle East. Hint, hint. I do believe Trump and the Patriots, they are dealing with that as well. Certainly not in the same fashion, but they are dealing with them. And we were told, the 17 poster told us that would be saved for last. So important to keep that context in mind, in focus. And of course, we don't put our trust in President Trump. We don't put our trust in man's worldly systems. We put our trust in God and God alone. So even though you can look at these signs and say, yes, we see a military plan to flush a deep state, ultimately our trust is not in those military generals that approached Trump and recruited him to run for president. I've talked about that in the past. We don't put our trust in mere men that God uses as vessels. We put our trust in God and God alone. And I think that's very, very important to keep in mind, especially right now as well. So I didn't mean for this to be a real long broadcast, but I did feel it was warranted to come back on and do one today, given the rapid unfolding developments that are ongoing. I do want to say, as a word of caution before I sign off, that the deep state is not completely out of power. Let's put it that way. And so if there's ever been a time where Iran would, shall we say, activate sleeper cells, multiple people have reported that they are inside this country. You have Iranian sleeper cells inside this country. And so it could well be possible that this is a time where they're activated, potentially. We'll see what happens. But I think it goes without saying, as always, but especially right now, if you see something, say something. Use common sense when you're out in public, and understand that the deep state is like a cornered, it's like a ferocious lion cornered, basically, pardon the pun. I know there's been a lot of imagery, lately about, the lion and stuff like that, but when you have an animal cornered, it's going to lash out. So I think that we're entering a very critical period of time with respect to that. And so, don't assume that you're going to coast right into, the deep state being, dealt with and taken out. This is a war. It's not always kinetic, but, and I think that's something else I should have mentioned too. We have been in a war, folks, against the deep state. It's been an information warfare. And at times, such as right now, it's also kinetic. But predominantly, it's information psychological warfare. So it's very important to remember all that. So that's why, for me, it's challenging sometimes when you're trying to put together facts and information, because there is so much psychological warfare out there. So very important to keep that all in the back of your mind as well. So, in the things I've mentioned, such as the 17 poster, the military generals recruiting Trump, pre-2015 and all of that, to basically lead a sort of like a, basically the deep state took full control after JFK was unalived. And, I don't think I need to go into all the buildup with that, but basically military generals approached Trump and recruited him, and we're seeing this play out. This is a movie for people, everyday people, to see, because you're being confronted with facts. You're being shown the deep state in its raw form, and you're basically forced to make a decision. Do you want this for your future? Do you want endless wars? Do you want the, central bank system? I know that seems unrelated to this, but it really all ties together. Do you want all of this? Do you want all of this top-down control from the deep state? So, this is an ongoing battle versus good versus evil. This is not a right versus left. This is not a Republican, Democrat, and they're a uniparty anyway. But this is a good versus evil type of warfare. We have the side of God. We have the side of the devil. And that's exactly what this all plays out. It's all spiritual, and then it manifests in the physical realm. And that's exactly what we're seeing take place here. So, if I need to come back on and do more reports and update this particular topic more, I will. I'm not necessarily interested in doing a play-by-play. Other channels do that and certainly have more resources than I do. I want to come on and provide something unique in a way of commentary and try to, help my audience kind of navigate through the most critical pieces of all this. But anyways, I do think at that point, I feel since that I've said all I need to say, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off for right now, but I'll come back on later if I need to. But on that note, just remember my website, thecitizenreport.net. You can get the links to Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble all right there. And you make sure to subscribe here on YouTube. I don't charge for this podcast, but if you want to help me out, subscribe here and on Rumble. That goes a long way to help me and kind of navigate through the algorithms as well. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Citizen Report, this live edition of the Citizen Report. And by the grace of God, I'll see you right back here again next time. Have a great rest of your Saturday and a great weekend, everyone.